Thank you for being with me today as I talk about DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and how it might, because it affects the members of our community here in Hamilton. The Supreme Court recently ruled on proposed changes to the DACA program that delayed those changes from going into effect. So DACA is an abbreviation for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It refers to those who are brought to the United States from another country while they were children. The program has enormous consequences for our brothers and sisters in Christ, many members of our parish community here in Hamilton. For that reason, I feel a need to help all members of my flock to think critically about related legislation and its proposed and intended aims. In doing so, I'll also call attention to church teaching that informs us on this issue of our day. And when I speak on an issue, it is important to note that this is a matter of prudential judgment. There are things that are matters of faith that we as Catholics are obligated to believe. Prudential judgment is what's the best way to care for, our brothers and sisters. And there can be legitimate disagreement about that. That's what I mean by prudential judgment. It's not part of the deposit of faith that requires the assent of faith. Even so, I want to guide you in living out an act of charity. And I want to speak up for the many young adults and children in my pastoral care whose ability to thrive is bound up with our action or inaction on this matter. In thinking critically about any proposed legislation, my intention is to answer 4 questions. What is the intended outcome? Is that an outcome worth pursuing? Will this legislation be effective in achieving the desired outcome? And what are the unintended but foreseeable consequences? And based on our answer to those 4 questions, you have a really good idea of whether this is a legislation that would be good to support or not. But in order to answer those questions, first we need to know what we are talking about. And so bear with me as I read to you a summary of the DREAM Act of 2019 that was provided by Congressional Research Services. So DREAM Act of 2019 is a bill that was drafted to be taken up in the Senate, but the Senate has not acted upon it yet. And this is a summary that's provided. The summary is provided by Congressional Research Services. So the DREAM Act of 2019. This bill directs the Department of Homeland Security to cancel removal and grant lawful permanent resident status on a conditional basis to an alien who is inadmissible or deportable or is in temporary protected status who has fulfilled that meets the following criteria. They have been continuously physically present in the United States for 4 years preceding this bill's enactment. That this person was younger than 18 years of age on their initial date of entry into the United States. That this person is not inadmissible on various grounds, such as those related to crime or security. That crime or security could disqualify a person from this program. And also that this person has fulfilled specified educational requirements. The bill continues, the Department of Homeland Security shall cancel the removal of and adjust to the status of an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence on a conditional basis, an alien who is granted deferred action for childhood arrival status, unless the alien has engaged in conduct that would make that alien ineligible for DACA. So it's granting under law a certain status that was given under the authority of President Obama previously. The Department of Homeland Security shall remove the conditional basis of the permanent resident status granted under this bill if the alien meets various requirements such as maintaining residence in the United States and acquiring a degree from an institution of higher learning or serving in the uniformed services. The Department of Homeland Security may not disclose or use information provided in applications for this program filed under this bill or in DACA requests for immigration enforcement purposes. The bill repeals a restriction barring states from providing higher education benefits to undocumented aliens unless those benefits are available to all U.S. citizens. So it identifies a specific group of people. Those who came as children, they've been residing in the United States for more than 4 years. They're not, they haven't committed any crimes or other conditions of security that would make them an imminent threat, and that they have fulfilled specific educational requirements. So that's the group that we're talking about, and it's saying that they would have permanent resident status in the United States. That's what the bill aims to do. That's what the bill is written to do. And so with that, we can proceed to our 4 questions. What is the intended result? Primarily, the intention is to allow a limited group of people, those who have been here, who came as children, who have been here for over 4 years, and who are not criminals, who have fulfilled educational requirements, to remain and thrive in what might be the only culture and the only home they've ever known. By making it law, through the legislative branch as opposed to an executive order, these young people also receive a greater level of security than they would have from a policy that can change at the whim of the sitting president. That is the primary intention of this legislation. It's worth noting also that this legislation allows this group of young people to earn taxable income and to participate more fully in our economy, as workers, as consumers, as students investing in their shared future for them and for our nation. They're already here. They will need to provide for themselves and for others. They will work for an income legally or illegally. If they have to work illegally, then they cannot report it for tax purposes. If they're able to work legally, they can pay taxes, and they will pay taxes. Most of them in this category have already been paying taxes under the executive or the permissions of the executive order. The next question is this an outcome worth pursuing? Now, because this is a question of moral value. Is this worth pursuing? And as a question of moral value, the gospel has much to bring to light to this question. And so to this question, I answer an unequivocal yes. This is an aim worth pursuing. First and foremost, it stems from the inherent dignity of these young persons who are made in the image and likeness of God. So that's a tenet of faith, that we're made in the image and likeness of God, that confers on us an inherent dignity, and that also has associated with it some basic human rights on account of their inherent dignity. In that sense, it's unjust to pull these people out of the community they grew up in. Remember, they've been here for more than 4 years. To place them in an unfamiliar community with no resources and just to say to them, fend for yourselves. That's unjust. That would be unconscionable. That would be an insult and affront to their dignity as creators, human beings created in the image and likeness of God. I would also say that it's a goal worth pursuing because I firmly believe that our economy is stronger with them participating as workers, as consumers, as students investing in the future. Permit me a brief word on each. So as workers, before the coronavirus shutdown, unemployment was below 5%. Their presence here is not pushing people out of jobs. it's more likely that their absence would cause us not to be able to sustain our economy in certain sectors. We wouldn't have the workers to support certain sectors of our economy. As legal permanent residents, they can earn an income to provide for themselves, which is what they want, which is what we want. As to attending college, I'll be honest with you, I have many grievances with the current state of higher education in this country. There's things that I think are broken about it. However, denying this group of bright minds access to higher education is not the way to solve those problems. And then a third aspect to that is another aspect is enculturation. And I just touch on it here. I'll speak more to enculturation with the question of unintended but foreseeable consequences. But for the question of whether this bill, the DREAM Act of 2019, proposes a goal worth pursuing. In terms of enculturation, we note that one condition for permanent resident status is having fulfilled specified educational requirements. So if there are concerns about enculturations, then you would learn more about the bill or ask questions about this legislation with regard to what are those educational requirements. But again, what is the aim of this bill? It's to give young people who grew up in the United States, have been there for more than 4 years, and who are the ability to work and to attend a college in the only country that they've really known for their formative years. Is that an aim worth pursuing? Yes. The third question: will it be effective in achieving the desired outcome? Simply put, yes. A similar program has been in place since 2012 for 8 years under executive orders under the authority of the president. And it has done exactly what was intended, that these young people would be able to go to school, get a job, work, and be productive members of our society. And that's what has happened. And so the fourth question, and this is probably the most complicated, is what are the unintended but foreseeable consequences? So again, the intended consequence is that this group of young people would be able to work and study in the culture that they know best, the one that's familiar to them. But there are unintended other consequences, some of which are foreseeable. And some of those concerns have to do with, are we encouraging more migration illegal migration into the United States? The argument on that line is that, since if these children can receive the permanent resident status, then all we have to do is get them there, and then it'll be taken care of. A couple things to point out on this. One is that this legislation only gives it to those who have already been here for more than 4 years. So those who come now are not guaranteed these same protections. That would be part of a more comprehensive immigration reform. A second thing to point out is, if the concern is about people entering into the United States, then a sensible solution would be to invest or to include in this bill, appropriations of allocations of resources to the Border Patrol, so as to better control that entrance into the country. Another possible unintended but foreseeable consequence that some would point out is, some would suggest that there would be an increased demand for social services. I think it's more likely that we would have the opposite effect. That the ability to have lawful employment and access to higher education would reduce the need of this group for social services. And along with that, it's likely that they would help care and provide for other members of their family that might otherwise be needing those social services. We'd mentioned that there might be some who are encouraged to enter into the country because of this, which I don't find that terribly compelling. And then, but related to that is, I guess in an unintended but foreseeable consequences that some might try to commit acts of fraud to acquire this designation for those who have been here less than 4 years as indicated by the legislation. But again, if that's the case, then you stipulate penalties within the legislation itself. On the other hand, some might say that the bill that this legislation doesn't go far enough. But I would say that a small step, that if we just consider this group, it's a worthwhile step to take. That if a small step is better than staying in place. But on the other side, they might say that those who have been here less than 4 years are still in an uncertain standing. So that question is left for a more comprehensive immigration reform, which would require more deliberation on the part of our legislators. And before I conclude my consideration of these 4 questions, I do want to say a word about enculturation. So even Pope Francis has acknowledged that an important part of receiving migrants is this process of enculturation. That there are things that make the United States what she is. There are things that are a fundamental part of our nation. And that there is a risk that if you have a large influx of immigrants who do not value the same things, that it does change your nation. But that does not, that is not an issue in this regard. These are young people who have been here for more than 4 years. Their culture is our culture. Our culture is their culture. They're enculturated. They know English. Many of them have been in our school system learning our values. That most of them are here because they want to work hard to provide for themselves and their family. That's a good American value. And so, in terms of enculturation, those who are those who are most affected by this legislation are ones who have already embraced our American values. For some of them, they don't even have a working use of Spanish. Most are bilingual. But for some of them, English is their first language. And so enculturation should not be a concern that would cause us to oppose this legislation for the DREAM Act of 2019 that would grant that permanent resident status of deferred action for childhood arrivals. So as we look at this legislation, what is it? Is it an aim worth pursuing? Yes. The unintended but foreseeable consequences do not take away from, are not substantial enough to override the proposed and desired benefits of this legislation. And so for that reason, I along with the U.S. bishops, encourage you to promote this legislation amongst your senators. And so so if you want to assist the members of the deferred action for childhood arrivals, I'm encouraging you to contact your senators and ask them to support Senate Bill 874, the DREAM Act of 2019. The U.S. bishops also ask you to encourage senators to introduce or co-sponsor a companion bill to House Resolution number 6. I can't say how the House bill is like or unlike the bill that I've just considered with you today, but it does have the same general aim. You can find more information at the website linked below this video. The website also has form letters that you can send to your senators. I hope to have a form letter available that's specific to our parish as well, and to have that available to you in the near future. During this time, we've thought critically about this legislation, the DREAM Act of 2019, which is a draft of a Senate bill. I'm asking you to support it for the reasons given in this video. Many young people of St. Julie Billiart Parish of our Hamilton Catholic Pastoral Region and their ability to thrive is bound up with the DACA program. And I'm asking you to act on their behalf and on behalf of all who have so much to offer to our nation. Please contact your senators asking them to support this or similar legislation. And God bless.